Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Brad Wolf and I am the Executive Director of Reimagine, a nonprofit organization that is here with you this evening hosting our virtual Candlelight Vigil for this month of February. Um, for those of you who are new here, Reimagine's mission is really to help people of all backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, uh, face loss, to face adversity, and to face something we all have in common, our mortality, and do that together. And then also, ultimately, to channel the hard parts of life into meaningful action, into creativity, into love, into impact for this world, so that we might both heal ourselves and the world simultaneously. Tonight, though, we're really going to be focused on the first half of our mission, uh, just being with what is, the opportunity to mourn all that we've lost over the last month, the last week, even today. There are things that we're losing all the time. Each moment as it passes, we are here to honor those moments, to honor all those losses, to release them, and to take time in our hearts and in our collectivism to honor what uh, just all these experiences of life, and to not necessarily embrace it, but to accept it here together in community, and then be able to metabolize it in a healthy way that allows us as a community to move forward with love in our hearts, to then create that better life for ourselves and for one another as we move forward. And so it's a very special occasion. We have some incredible guests. We've hosted over 4,000 events now since the pandemic online, of people just like you out there hosting experiences on our platform to make sure that everyone, our vision is that everyone has free and engaging spaces to process these hard parts of life. And that's really a movement that we want to start as something we believe everyone should have access to. And so you, by being here tonight, that means something to us, and is a big step forward. So thank you in advance for what we're going to do here together. And I can't wait to tell you more about these special guests that you see on the screen right here shortly. Again, though, just to contextualize what we're doing, the name Reimagine. Why is it Reimagine? Because we really want to see things differently together. We want to reframe some of the things that are hardest in life: loss, injustice, pain, isolation, and suffering, and really see how those things connect. How does our loss and our love connect? How does injustice and equality, what is their relationship? And how might we transform injustice to equality, not by pushing away what's hard, but by noticing it? And we're going to talk about that today with one of our guests. Pain and growth, and isolation and community, and acts of service. So ultimately, bringing together all of these dualities of life, holding space for them, and moving forward together. Now, just to make sure everyone here is set up for a successful vigil this evening, you see first that there's a candle in the center. Now is a great time, if you don't have a candle handy, to go grab your trusty candle. We're going to be doing a group candle lighting in a couple minutes to begin holding this very sacred container for this space. In addition, I want to let everyone know about closed captioning. So if for some reason the audio is hard for you, or you'd like to just see the words scroll across the screen, you can click that little button, Show Captions, and you'll get the closed captioning streaming across your Zoom. The chat tonight, as per all these vigils we host, has a special function. Yes, we want to use it to start getting a conversation going. And to that end, if you want to just share where you're calling in from, and really not who you're honoring in this space, but just what are you hoping for together this evening? What brings you here? What hope in your heart has brought you to this space that you want to find in this space this evening? Just to get a sense of that would be wonderful, to introduce yourself to one another. You can also use the chat for technical questions, but later on in the vigil, we're going to be using the chat for our special honor ceremony. where we'll have an opportunity, each of us, to share the names of people in our own lives that we are honoring. And maybe there's collective losses we want to hold space for, other parts of life that we've lost that we want to honor. And we're going to hold space for all of that together in a special honor ceremony later on, as really the central part of these vigils. I also want to invite everyone to turn on your cameras, because it is so nice to see human faces on these in these Zoom rooms that make it as human as possible. If you can't turn on your camera, that is quite all right. Be comfortable where you are. And finally, um, we'll be unmuting at the very, very end for sure, just to hear everybody's voice. But we may have time for questions at the end. We'll see what happens. And so for now, though, you can just relax and soak in everything we're going to be doing together. Now, in terms of what kind of space this is, and I think this is important because some of the subject matter we want to talk about, Rick and I spoke a little bit about thinking about some of the collective pain in the world and some of the political tensions that exist. And so we just wanted to make sure that we have the right container set for this space for everybody, and sharing the values that really make up this space. Um, Andy, would you be willing to read this? This is my colleague Andy. I wanted to invite him so you don't hear my voice droning on, to maybe read what kind of space this is.
A grieving space, despite our varied backgrounds.
There you go, Andy.
Can you hear me?
I still, oh, I guess keep going. I guess I'm the only one who can't hear you.
A grieving space. Despite our varied backgrounds and beliefs, we can unite in sorrow. A compassionate space. Our compass points towards mourning loss and widening our hearts with love. A brave space. In a time where fear is rampant, simply showing up with and for others from diverse walks of life is an act of courage. An imperfect space. Acknowledging our limitations, we approach with humility, knowing that our words might fall short.
Thank you so much, Andy. And I really want to highlight this, the brave space just right now, because just to say for each of you that have showed up here this evening, we really see that as an act of courage, to reemphasize that. And by you being here, that says a lot about what's possible. So thank you. We also want to share what kind of space this is not. And I'll take those, Andy. This is not a blaming space. Today is simply for being with ourselves and others amidst what's hard. This is not a political space. While every action and inaction can be viewed through the lens of politics, our intention is to step beyond those boundaries and try to be apolitical here. This is not a religious space, and while religion provides solace for so many of us, our gathering remains neutral, respecting all faiths and people of no faith. And finally, this is not a solution space. This gathering is about bearing witness to our collective pain and not seeking immediate remedies. And so if you feel that these statements align with your values, then continue hanging with us for the next, well, till I guess 6:30 Pacific time. I guess that's another hour and 15 minutes. And if these don't align and you want to take time on your own, it's okay not to stay here with us. So just want to invite everyone to be part of these values with us, and thank you so much in advance for opening your heart to these ideas. Now, what are we doing this evening? Just so you get a lay of the land. I'm going to be playing some music. My colleague Dara Cosberg, thank you so much, Dara, for that beautiful altar that everyone's going to see intermittently through this program. She built that altar, and thank you so much for that. In a second, we're going to get going on our candle lighting ceremony, and then we're going to have a sacred conversation with our featured guest, Rick Hanson, our honor ceremony with Patty Montoya, who I can't wait to introduce as well, and then we will extinguish our candles as a community, and we'll be on our way with some potential closing reflections from some of you. With that, let us now turn toward our candles, and I'll take a minute to get those candles lit as a community. And as we're lighting our candles, I would like to call up these three colleagues, Andy, Dara, and Zubin from Reimagine, each of whom has made a significant contribution to the space here and to all of these efforts, to read for us and with us 3 times this candlelighting blessing. We invite all of you, wherever you are now, to read along with us and to have your voice ring out in your own space in solidarity with this great blessing that the team has provided for you.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
Now keep your candles up. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's now just hold our candles to the screen, to one another, and see all the light that we've created and generated as a community. I see so many candles out there and so many wonderful faces here with us this evening. Let's all just find one person in some random square out there, and maybe Rick, since you are such a bearer of wisdom, and I'm going to introduce you in a second, but is there something that you might offer that we should, some loving kindness that we might want to share to somebody else in this space that could help ground us as we are looking out into this space, that could help set the intention for how we hold space for one another while we all have our candles lit?
Rick, you're unmuted. You're muted.
I thought now is for sure, surely me.
Oh, no, I thought I was on the ball here. Sorry. I was just going to say whatever wisdom I have, I've gotten it from elsewhere. So it's just coming through. And I thought it might be touching to look at faces, pick a particular face in the Zoom screen here, or a particular name even. And in your mind, just have some soft, caring thoughts that take the form essentially of, like me, you. Like me, you are living. Like me, for example, you want to live. Like me, you have known loss. Like me, you will get sick. Like me, you will die someday. So I'll be quiet for a few moments here while, in your own way, you look at another person and really let them land in your heart. And if you like, using the words that I've just offered here, like me. And let yourself really see it and know it about them, including sweet things like me, you like chocolate. Like me, you love petting your cat. Like me, you are a light to other people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick, and everyone. We can put our candles down, place them by our sides, and we can keep them lit through the duration of this time we have together. And I am so excited, really, to engage in a deeper conversation with Rick Hanson. Just to tell you more about him for a second, Dr. Rick Hanson is a psychologist, and an expert on positive neuroplasticity. He's a senior fellow at an organization that I love with my full heart, UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He has written 7 books published in 31 languages with over 1 million copies in English alone. His most recent publication is Making Great Relationships. He's the founder of an incredible organization and movement that we're going to discuss today called the Global Compassion Coalition, as well as the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom, as well as the co-host of Being Well podcast, which I believe he runs with his son. And so talking about intergenerationality, which is something that is so a part of this conversation. His free newsletters have over 250,000 subscribers, and I hope you become one if you're not already. And his online programs have scholarships available for those with financial needs, which we appreciate. He's lectured at NASA, Google, Oxford, and Harvard, and in the spring of 2020, Rick led meditation as part of Reimagine's first virtual festival, which meant so much to all of us. He began meditating in 1974 and has taught in meditation centers truly worldwide. And in great news, he is a relative neighbor of my own in Northern California. So I'm grateful to be near you, Rick, and a long time really admirer of your of everything that you've contributed to the world, which is so vast. And really, I would say in my own words, as I read those, that Rick has an uncanny ability to tie together the heart and our brain and to think about those two things and see how they intersect. And we're going to dive into that. But Rick, first of all, thank you for being here. And in just beginning our conversation tonight, because this is a space of mourning and of honoring, we've all just lit candles. Everyone's going to have a chance later on to share who or what they're honoring. Who or what would you like to bring into the space in your own life that you want to either honor or let go of? Something that you're processing right now that you'd like to share with all of us.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And as you know, Brad, and I'll just disclose to others, right now, I have COVID. And it seemed relevant and appropriate to be with you all here while having a fairly mild case so far of an illness that killed well over 1 million Americans and millions of other people around the world. So there's something about being sick that is such a great teacher. As you may know, in the Buddhist tradition, it's said that the Buddha encountered 4 messengers or teachers, when he began his practice. He encountered someone who was old, someone who was ill, someone who was dead, and a spiritual practitioner. So these are all divine messengers, heavenly messengers, great teachers. And so there's something about right now being in the middle of an illness that reminds us of how profoundly vulnerable we actually always are, how inherently frail the body is, how delicate our relationships can be. And it is the nature of all things that arise to also pass away. So we live in the middle continuously of the arising, and also we live in the middle of the passing away. And both truths are the nature of our living. So anyway, I am glad that I'm sick right now in general, because it opens me into vulnerability, and also because it seems so relevant here. So in that larger context, I've been thinking a lot lately about our family's just precious cat, Pistachio. I call him in. He died nearly 3 years ago, and he's a rare being, period, and certainly a rare being among cats. So Pistachio is very present here. And the ways in which that loss was particularly huge for someone in our family and very consequential for them. So when we think about loss and people or beings who are gone, we can also be aware of the wounds, or injuries, let's say, or hollow places they leave behind. And so when we call them into our awareness, we can also call into awareness the ripple effects, the consequences that still can be very present years and years later. So that's That's my response to your question there, Brad.
Well, thank you for sharing, Rick, and thank you. Our heart goes out to you for speedy recovery through COVID,
Mm,
and thank you for the reminder for all of those that who've died from COVID. That
yeah,
was really the impetus for these vigils initially, and why we started hosting these spaces each month to mourn.
yeah.
And so it is fitting in some way for you to share that, and then also for Pistachio. Thank you. We hold Pistachio in our hearts here. Um, so, Rick, I wonder if you would begin telling us, you have 7 books. I've read uh, many of them, of practices that teach us um, really how to be our best selves on this earth. And you have so much wisdom and knowledge that you've acquired through your own life journey. What got you, just so people we can ground people in who you are and how you came to be here with us? What is driving this for you?
Well, first, I don't feel special, and it's a lot of luck and events that have led to wherever anyone is, good luck and bad luck, right? So I appreciate all that, Brad. And I would say a central motive for me that I bet is real for the people here is going back to when I was a very young child, a sense of a lot of unnecessary suffering. And to be clear, some pain, some loss is very real. The 3 of the 4 heavenly messengers, right? Illness, aging, and death. That's real. I'm seeing some of the beings who are being named in the chat along the way. Those are very, very real things. But it also seemed to me, and seemed to, of course, the great teachers, including teachers in my tradition of clinical psychology, which is only about 100 years old. There's a recognition that in addition to what the Buddha called the first darts of life, we can add the second and third and fourth and fifth darts of our own, our reactions to the conditions that we're in. And growing up in a kind of a conventional suburban, lower middle class American environment, still I saw a lot of unnecessary suffering around me, unnecessary bickering and anxiety and criticism and feuding and feelings of inadequacy. And so deep down inside, I kind of set out on a quest of sorts to figure out what to do about it. I mean, I had no idea what to do about it as a 3-year-old or a 13-year-old, but I was kind of on my path. And then I landed in the beginning of the human potential movement in the 60s and 70s, and I was kind of on my way. But I guess most fundamentally, like you, and your whole team and this whole framing, it's not just that we look at what's hard, or it's that we want to practice with it. We want to find ways to accept it and be with it. We want to find ways to respond to the brain's tendency to ruminate negatively. We want to find ways to practice with the brain's, it's called negativity bias. It's like Velcro for painful experiences, but Teflon for beneficial ones. We want to practice with those things. We want to find ways to keep our hearts open to those who have wronged us, even as we firmly take action against them, if it's appropriate. We want to practice. And so I think this is a community of practice. And one of the ways we practice is we open our hearts to each other. When we see these names and the losses coming through the chat, we slow it down to let it land. We honor them by letting it land in ourselves, rather than a conventional, process of just kind of nodding in the direction of something horrible and then moving on and turning the channel, turning the page. So anyway, so that set me on my way, practice. And the how of practice interests me immensely. And I feel deeply honored to be in a community of practice, because you can feel it when you're in a community of practice like this one.
Well, thank you, Rick. And something you talk about in your work is this concept of temperament and understanding, a kind of a self-awareness, because
Yeah.
you, maybe you can talk about temperament generally, and how we use temperament, or grow an awareness, and how that is beneficial. Then maybe also share what kind of temperament do you have that is
Uh,
kind of moving you in a way that is moving you in this direction.
that's such an interesting question related to loss, because of course, loss is so individual. In our family system, the loss of pistachios affected different members of our family in different ways. And some of that has to do with temperament. And so there's temperament that we're born with. And so psychologists uh, talk about some, one of the classic structures is flexible, fearful, and feisty. So children, in preschool at age 2 or so forth, can be fairly reliably, sorted into 3 loose categories, flexible, fearful, and feisty. That's kind of a range there. And you can also have temperaments that have to do with anxiety or irritability or melancholy or cheerfulness. So these are temperaments. And then life lands on us. So many of the losses people experience land on trauma, including collective trauma, right? And so that shapes our temperament, in effect, in a broad sense. So then the question becomes, what do we do with our temperament? And to be kind of practical here, there's a simple model in psychology and medicine that says that how life is for a person is the result of 3 kinds of factors: challenges, vulnerabilities, and resources. And those 3 are located out in the world, in the physical body and the mind. I tend to focus on resources, and particularly resources in the mind. One of 9 different ways, if you think about it, to make things better. And so if a person is dealing with loss, right, one of the questions is, all right, what's the nature of that challenge? It could be an economic loss. You lose your partner. In addition to that loss of love, that could be scary economically, especially as you age, or for other practical reasons. There are different aspects of the challenges we face. And then they land on vulnerabilities in our temperament. Let's suppose somebody is already prone to depression or just simply melancholy. Well, then a loss is really going to land kind of hard. Or maybe a person is prone to anxiety. And so then the loss could land on that vulnerability. What do you do about it? That's where practice comes in. And that's where, for me, there are 3 major types of resources psychologically. There are the resources that help us be with what's there, to feel the feelings, to bear the pain, to investigate it, to explore what's under the surface without trying to change anything. Second, there are the resources that help us release, that help us vent, that help us release tension from the body, that help us let go of emotion, that help us let go of beliefs that are not good for us or others, thoughts, and help us let go of desires that may not be good for us and others of various kinds, like self-medicating with too much alcohol as we deal with a loss. So that's the second kind of resource. And as you hear me here, you might be doing what I do, is like a mental checklist. Like, okay, got that, check. Oh, opportunity, room for improvement, right? And the third kind of resource is a key focus of my own career, which is, in addition to letting be and letting go, the third resource is to let in, to recognize the good that is also true, and to use that recognition and the experiencing of the good that is also true as the beginning of internalizing those experiences to grow enduring strengths inside, enduring positive traits inside that we can take with us wherever we go. So as a little example, and I hope I'm not blathering here, as a little example, then around a loss, or let's say, vicarious loss, or not even vicarious, with events in the Middle East, or moral outrage, in a context of hopefully trying to recognize the whole with compassion. whatever it may be, to be able to be with it, the first kind of resource psychologically, we might want to grow the capacity to tolerate painful feelings, to tolerate anxiety and sorrow and outrage and worry, and to tolerate those so we can be with them mindfully. Mindfulness is a major resource that helps us be with our pain. Or we might want to grow resources for letting go, like the capacity to separate from our beliefs and question them. That's a resource for letting go of beliefs. Or the capacity to be in relationship with another person vulnerably and let the tears flow. To have the strength to sit vulnerably with someone while your tears are flowing. You can build that strength too. Or last, if you want to build resources related to letting in, there's perspective on recognizing that no one gets through this life without loss. Almost no one gets through this life without making catastrophic mistakes, me included, that sometimes lead to terrible things. And yet we can grow the good of perspective about all that, right? Realizing that we're not alone in our common humanity. Other people make mistakes too. Other people have losses too. Just to finish here, we can also, for example, let in the knowing of what endures. Life endures. All the good you have ever made endures. The ways that the beings you have lost are still inside you. They're still with you. That endures. The ongoingness of reality endures. The fruits of so many good efforts from so many good people throughout history, that endures. Your own goodness, your innate goodness, even if, like me, you've made some big mistakes, that endures, right? And the underlying ground of all, whatever we make of it, perhaps simply as mystery, stillness, timelessness. Perhaps we go further and sense in it qualities of awareness and even love. Boy, that endures for sure as well. So maybe that's a way to finish here. Just taking a look and for yourself as you face your challenges and you acknowledge your vulnerabilities, what resources can you grow? Resources for being with what is, and also resources for releasing what's painful and harmful, and also resources for growing what is wholesome and enjoyable and helpful. These are opportunities for us all. No matter what has happened around us, no one can defeat you in the inner temple of your being.
That's beautiful.
That's extraordinary to know that.
Yeah. And you're talking about resources, and what's coming up for me, obviously one wonderful place to understand where we can get access to these resources. I have to just, this is a plug, but your books are really incredible, in some ways, conglomerations of various resources and practices we can actually take on. And there's a bevy of them, whether it's about relationships, there's a whole, I don't know how, maybe there's 150 to 100, maybe more in that book. And in many of your books, there's really they're containers for these practices. I'm wondering, there's so many practices that are possible for us as humans, so many resources that exist. Are there any in your own life or that you'd want to share with us that really stick out to you, that have benefited you, maybe that supersede others, or that especially in this conversation around loss that you feel would be particularly relevant? How do we hold all the optionality in our minds about, like, wow, how do I actually get started on developing and cultivating these resources?
Well, no surprise. Take in the good, right? No surprise when you're experiencing something useful, slow down and let it sink in, rather than doing the conventional thing of blowing right by it. That's an enormous thing. It's very simple, but a handful of times each day, slow down for a breath or longer to stay with the experience of something useful. Could be a moment of calming, could be a moment of feeling cared about, maybe a moment of insight into your own mind. Slow down to let it land, feel it in your body, and focus on what is meaningful or enjoyable about it. Those 3 steps: extend the duration of the experience for a breath or longer, embody it, feel it in your body, and third, focus on its reward value, focus on what's enjoyable or meaningful about it, are factors that increase positive neuroplastic change, increase the degree to which that experience leaves lasting traces behind in altered neural structure or function. That's bottom line, though. Slow down and take in the good. That would be one I would really say. A second, recently, that I've been really getting value from, I call it go wide. Neurologically, when we're upset, when we're ruminating, we tend to be kind of fixated and focused on what's close at hand, understandably. After you be with that for a while, though, you can't just be with your mind. You need to work with your mind as well. Go wide. Lift your gaze to the horizon. Consider the bigger picture. Be aware of the volume in your room. Be aware of your body as a whole as you breathe. These are different ways to go wide. Notice immediately as you go wide, your suffering will reduce. The self-contraction will start to open as you go wide, and there'll be more of a sense of things as a whole, including the whole that is living through you. We live in the endless gifting of the arising present. We're living in creation continuously, and recognizing that is a balm on the heart. It's a balm on the hurting heart, and recognizing that also opens us out into the infinite and into mystery. That's pretty good. Go wide, go wide. Third, and these are very personal to me, it's to really let it sink in that you really are a fundamentally good person, you know? And very often there's doubt about that. It's not about conceit or ego. People who tend to be narcissistic have deep doubts about their own worth. So they are pulling for endless supplies. They live in the realm of the hungry ghosts, pulling for supplies. It's a deep balm to know that you're a good person. And related to that, I've stumbled across this material recently. It has to be understood correctly from, of all people, Nietzsche, who basically said it's important, amor fati, to love your fate. Now, this does not mean spiritual bypassing. This does not mean putting up with atrocities, does not mean putting up with dictators and would-be, wannabe authoritarian dictators. It means putting stop signs, in front of kids' schools, amor fati. But it means in a very profound way to realize that your life is a whole, including your screw-ups, right? Or losses, or ill luck, your disability, your illness, the mistreatment you've suffered. None of this is about putting up with that. I want to be really clear about it, but there's something about just kind of accepting the whole of yourself that can open up the capacity to recognize what a good person you are. And to finish, we can see it in each other. Like, not out of flattery. As you were playing your guitar, Brad, and pulling us into this and your own efforts here, the very eloquent languaging on the slides that you shared in the very beginning about what this space is, what it isn't, and the rest of it, I can see this about you. You're a really good person. And I don't know you well. We can routinely even see it about people we pass on the street. We just look at them for a few moments. We could really see that they're a basically good person, and as you get to know someone deeply, you can realize what a good person they are. Maybe that goodness is expressed in awkward ways or problematic ways, or it's veiled in some ways, it's hindered or covered over by various things, but deep down, you can really see that about someone. Well, we can see that in ourselves, and we can bring that loving kindness to every part of ourselves, warts and all. Anyway, so those are three. Take in the good repeatedly, go wide, let it sink in that you really are a fundamentally good person.
Thank you, Rick. I'm wondering out there, I see so many screens of faces. How many of you, by show of hands, how many of you were already familiar with Rick Hanson before this? How many of you were just meeting Rick for the first time? Okay, so it's almost like maybe 50-50 or so.
Yeah.
And so, something that Rick has been focused on in the more recent time period here is compassion. In a very deep way, and is creating a global organization to really bring together all of the folks interested in compassion in the world,
Yeah.
to move, to change the world. Really, if we could change the frequency of of how we're connecting, maybe that could make some inroads. And it's actually quite practical as well, not just frequencies.
Yeah.
I wonder, Rick, first maybe describe a little bit about that effort and how you see it relating to what we're doing here tonight.
Well, we're all gathered in the heart of compassion here. The movement of the heart in response to suffering. Kindness does not presuppose suffering. Compassion does. And compassion is grounded in empathy. We let it land. I mean, I'm seeing in the people, some of what's being shared in the chat, and we slow it down and we let it land. Compassion without empathy is sort of just phoning it in. All right. So we have compassion, and some of what we have compassion for cannot be changed. Losses that are irrevocable. Pistachio is not coming back, in my own case, for example. And there's certain sorrows in the world, like I cannot change. I cannot stop Hamas. I cannot stop the Israeli military. I don't have that power. I can't stop Putin. But we can still have compassion in our hearts for that kind of suffering. And we can have compassion for our own suffering that we can't change, self-compassion. So compassion is profound and powerful. I have found myself, related to my losses and my preoccupations with them, that it's interesting that when I deliberately kind of get in touch with, I call upon, I kind of call up, or I turn toward the love inside me for beings who have wronged me, or for those I have lost, I suffer less as a result. The trauma softens, the wound softens, the power of love. It's very strong. And again, to finish and, kind of be brief here, I would love it as an example that your movement to reimagine forms coalitions with other similar movements or groups or nonprofits or circles or organizations of various kinds in various cultural and settings, various kinds around the world, and form a mighty coalition to reimagine how we as humanity, the one whole single human band, all 8 billion of us sitting around the fire together, ultimately using modern technology to have a global campfire with 1 billion of us gathered around the circle once a month, say, that would be a wonderful, powerful thing. And it's through forming coalitions at scale, through collective action, that we can start to address both suffering that is unavoidable and the larger share of humanity's suffering that's grounded in injustice and systemic, historic, for thousands of years, in many cases, systems that create so much needless suffering by advantaging the few at the cost of the many. And the fundamental mission of the Global Compassion Coalition is to be a new kind of global commons, a ground in which, and a catalyst for, and a kind of midwife for coalitions that can be large enough to be strong enough to actually affect wealth and power, and in order to change systemic sources of suffering. That's the big picture vision, so that we can reestablish, we can restore the systems of what's called caring and sharing, compassion and justice, that were at the foundation of the way our ancestors lived in small bands. For 97% of the time, humans like you and I have walked this earth. How do we restore what worked inside our bands? Compassion and justice was the foundation of social life in bands of 40 to 50 people that lived together their whole lives. How do we restore that at the scale of 8 billion humans altogether by the end of this century? I mean, that's the fundamental mission of the Global Compassion Coalition.
Well, thank you so much for spearheading that effort. And
Yeah.
on behalf of the Reimagine community and all the people who are here this evening, we join you in this effort
Yeah.
to spread compassion in the world. And I would offer that what we are doing here, and everyone who showed up here, um, by not pushing away what's hard,
Yeah.
and acknowledging it together, that together we have all done something really powerful this evening. Because the way, if you go online and you look at what's happening right now, you see the way people respond to what happens in the world, and there's so much visceral pain and
Yeah.
getting manifested in such horrible ways. And here we all are dealing with some of the most painful things in the world, showing up together with compassion in our hearts in community.
Yeah.
And so what if that could be the response to what is happening as the beginning stages? And Rick, I know you have to skedaddle, and I want to thank you again for being here through COVID and showing up in such a big way for all of us in our community here, and just for showing up for so many people in the world through your just uh, the robustness of what are contributing
Ah.
vision is so beautiful and powerful. If you just want to leave us, as you with
Yeah.
one, Rick talks about just one thing,
Yeah.
one thing. That's a big kind of essence, and I feel like there's something about this idea of one thing, and I wonder what is the one thing, as you have all of us here, you've seen the chat.
Yeah.
So many of people
It's
here
really
are
kind.
mourning and grieving. What is the one thing that you want to either
Yeah.
you're either receiving or you want to offer, anything? What is your one thing for us?
Well, thank you very much. And I really meant it, about a worldwide movement to reimagine impermanence, yeah, and ultimate forms of impermanence, having to do with loss and the eventual loss of our own bodies, right? So I really support what you're all doing here. Reimagine, I believe, is a member of the Global Compassion Coalition. I believe that you are, Brad. Anyone can join, and organizations join too. And right now it's about 125,000. It's growing several thousand a week, and it's good. So everybody's invited. So that said, what I'm really struck by, I guess, are these two truths that are one truth with two faces. There's the truth of utterly receiving the full wave of what is, right? And the importance of that, and the importance of not resisting. Toward the end of my dad's life, there was a lot of craziness around his care. And, what helped me was to feel like kelp sitting on the surface of the ocean with the waves, the hurricanes even coming through, not resisting them, but like kelp sitting on the surface of the sea, still being there after the waves passed. And so that's one side of the truth. And to kind of explore, have I felt my feelings fully? Have I raged against the dying of the light fully? Right? Have I really let it land? How I impacted another person, right? So to me, that's one part of it. And sometimes we have to resource ourselves. So we just do this part for 1 second, and then we get a little stronger. We can do it for 2 seconds. We're growing it, but to do that which is possible for us with full receptivity. To me, that's one side of the truth. And the other side of the truth is to claim the power that we also have for the fullness of practice and the fullness of actions, mainly in our mind, but also to the extent we can out in the world, that we can do today. To really claim that. We typically have much more power, and in a good sense, much more influence in the innermost temple of our being, inside there. And we typically have more influence and options out in the world than we generally regard or see for ourselves. And collectively, wow, is a time for humanity to stand together and say, enough to Game of Thrones for 10,000 years. Enough, right? And claim that power that we do have. So for me, these are the two sides of one coin, utter receptivity and utter assertiveness, with the influence that you do have, rocking in the free world, as long as you can.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your kind heart, and for offering all of us some solace this evening and some inspiration as well. And everyone, I'm sure you can see why we invited Rick into this space and why he's such an amazing leader in the world. So if it'd be wonderful if everyone was able to share some kind of message of gratitude for Rick in the chat, and Rick will leave, but we can share it forward. We'll kind of take a little sampling and share them with Rick.
Well, I appreciate all that. And to emphasize, it's about us together, right? Not about me, it's about us. And I feel deeply honored by being here. I'm sorry, I should take care of myself. I'm sorry, I'm going to miss out on the rest. I was really looking forward to it. You've got some other really good teachers coming here. And so I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody. And I know you'll pass this along to me, but my candle's with you, right? Take good care.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, good. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now. So that was wonderful, and we're going to keep the spirit of this experience moving forward. And I'm so excited to introduce our next guest, who will be setting up for us the honor ceremony. Every vigil, we invite somebody special as a member of our community to share some words with us that open us up toward this really central part of why we've gathered here together for the real ritual for which we've shown up. Patty Montoya. So Patty Montoya is a proud Latina from Colombia, a country that I just had the wonderful privilege of personally visiting over the last 3 months, and is the founder of Titipoza. Patty is a psychic medium, an energy healer, and also a spiritual coach. Drawing from personal experiences of loss, trauma, and transition, Patty has dedicated herself to helping others navigate their grief and their trauma. She empowers her own clients, to transform their pain into inner peace and confidence. Her approach is deeply rooted in the belief that our life's journey involves learning, healing, and teaching. In 2022, Patty took part in Grief at the Table, which was a winter holiday gathering with other Reimagine collaborators, grief guides, and death care workers. And later this month, on February 22nd, we'll be excited to also share with you that Patty is going to be leading a session with Reimagine to help others cope with what's called anticipatory grief, the sense that we know, preparing for something in our minds that's coming. We start feeling that grief in advance, whether it's the future of our climate, or whether our own mortality, or the loss of a potential loved one. Anyway, with all that said, it is my distinct honor to welcome, to lead us to the honor ceremony, Patty Montoya.
Thank you, Brad. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. When Andy invited me, he asked me to write or share a few words. So I wrote something deep from my heart, and I hope it helps open a little bit. So it says, in the depth of grief, we often lose ourselves. Our world becomes consumed by pain, and we build a thick armor to shield ourselves. We vow never to let pain overpower us again. This was my reality as I watched my brother slowly and painfully lose a battle with leukemia. 9 years later, when my mother faced cancer for the second time, she decided not to fight, passing away peacefully at home, surrounded by family. This time I was the pillar of strength. I organized her funeral, continued working, and cared for my father. My brother's passing had fortified my armor. I wouldn't let grief seep its way through the cracks. Over time, I've come to understand this is a survival mechanism. I've learned to be gentle with myself for not breaking, for not allowing myself to be as vulnerable as I should have been. I remind myself back then there was no one to take care of me, no one to see the real me. My armor was the protection. But gradually, I've shed pieces of that armor, learning to feel, to sit with the excruciating pain of grief intertwined with love. I'd like to share a quote from a fantasy novel called Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. It says, I think we all wear armor. I think those who don't are fools, risking the pain of being wounded by the sharp edges of the world. Over and over again, but if I've learned anything from those fools, it is that to be vulnerable is a strength most of us fear. It takes courage to let down your armor, to welcome people to see you as you are. Sometimes I feel the same as you. I can't risk having people behold me as I truly am. But there's also a small voice in the back of my mind, a voice that tells me, you will miss so much by being so guarded. I share this very poignant quote because I believe as grievers, we're rarely seen, even by ourselves. Today, I celebrate you, your vulnerability. By being here, you're shedding some of that armor that has helped all of us survive our deepest sorrows. Now I want you to reflect on how much of that armor do you truly still need? Could we shed a little bit of that armor? So we can take just a little bit to feel, to breathe, as Rick shared us. As I often tell my clients, there's nothing you need to do right now. We're pressured by a society that demands everything immediately. But healing doesn't work that way. So I invite you to give yourself the time to slowly open the curtains to your heart. It might take months or even years. But the timeline doesn't matter. The important part is that you're seen by the only person who matters, which is yourself. So now let's move into the honor ceremony. When the music begins in a second, we ask you to share names of loved ones, perhaps a few meaningful things about them, or any feelings you want to share or release. We can share them in the chat. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much to everybody. Though the music is complete, don't feel that the chat needs to be stopped, and any expression of love or any name you have you'd like to share still, you can keep that chat flowing. But these shares are just really powerful, and I think we should all just take a minute to breathe, as Rick was sharing in community together, just for a second. On the count of 3, we'll just begin this process of maybe 3 deep breaths. 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. Breathe out. And in. And out. And one more big breath coming to just really release all that we've been holding and all the sacredness of our experience. Let's just be with that and release that energy. Breathing in. And one last time out. So thank you all. Thank you to Patty. I want to just say, Patty, for setting up this part of the ceremony with such beautiful, heartfelt words, such raw emotions that you were able to share with us. And I saw someone asking for a copy of that. And so if you're willing, Patty, if you share it forward, but no pressure, we could theoretically share that to the community. And we'll also share a recording of this whole recording with everybody who attended tonight as well. But really, it's just incredible to be with all of your these names and these expressions and these emotions that everyone's feeling, and it just says so much to what this is all about for everyone to show up like this in such a way together. With that in mind, it's now time for us to formally close the ceremony here. And I wanted to invite Patty back with myself. We will each read this candle extinguishing prayer. And I invite you to read along with us wherever you are. We'll recite it 3 times. And at the very conclusion, on the count of 3, at that point, we can collectively extinguish our candles together. But I want you to know that there's no pressure to extinguish your candle. If you want to keep your candle lit, that is okay as well. And if you don't have a candle, you can just simply take another deep breath with us and allow that exhale to represent your solidarity with us in this moment of what it means to be compassionate in community, something that unfortunately is so rare, but we're making less rare tonight. So, Patty.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. And one more time, Patty.
Okay, Andy's asking if I can do it in Spanish, so let me try to translate. Al apagar nuestras velas, dejamos la luz en el mundo, entregamos la luz al mundo. La luz que mantiene viva la esperanza y las memorias de aquellos que todavía honramos hoy y mañana y por el resto de nuestras vidas. And for everyone that's asking for what I wrote, I'll share with Andy and he can share with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And so on the count of 3 now, 3, 2, 1. All right, everyone, that concludes the formal ceremony, and it's been such a wonderful time with you. I want to invite my colleague Andy back that you've heard so much about and you may have met in some of our incredible other sessions that he's organized. Thank you, Andy, for inviting such fabulous guests tonight to be with us, and for all you're doing on behalf of our staff to open up this conversation and dialogue in such profound ways. I'd like to have Andy share with us a little bit about some of the items that we have to offer you. And Andy, if there's ones that you need me to share or would like me to share, I'm happy to talk on ones that you feel would be more appropriate for me to talk about, but maybe none of them.
Thank you, Brad. We've learned a lot organizing these vigils since March of 2020. And just at the end of last year, we compiled all of our learnings, our best practices, and now they're available to you to host your own vigils for your own communities. So please check out this resource from us to all of you. We hope you can use it, and we hope it's meaningful. This month, we are kicking off a series.
So many great slides here, Andy.
What's that?
There's so many great slides that I just skirted over, but that's cool. Let's get to, I think you're gonna hit on this, right?
Yes. We do a series that kicks off this month called Honeymoon and Heartbreak. It kicks off on Valentine's Day. So this is in lieu of chocolate and roses and cards. But it is actually full of love. There are opportunities for growth and new beginnings at the end of a relationship's life cycle. So I hope you can sign up for this series. Speakers include a marriage and family therapist, a breakup coach and entrepreneur, an advocate for divorced fathers, and a world-renowned photographer. They will share their experiences of grief and loss that ultimately developed into pathways for healing, creativity, service, and advocacy. Every month, we have 2 gatherings for those who are mourning loss. We have our COVID grief gathering and our Room for Grief. On February 13th, join us for those of you who are mourning losses that are specific to the pandemic. We hope you'll be there. And then on February 15th, Room for Grief is a more general space to mourn all kinds of loss using art, creativity, and prompts. And from our beloved Patty, on February 22nd, you'll get an opportunity to learn about coping strategies for the grief that we experience in the days, months, or years before the death of a loved one. So please register for Navigating Anticipatory Grief Together. And finally, our monthly vigil takes place on March 6th. We have some special guests, musician Lachi and filmmaker Jim Lebrecht. Both stand on the shoulders of the late, great Judy Heumann, who was known as the mother of disability rights. She changed the world for the better. We were honored to have Judy as a vigil guest back in 2022, and we will mark her yahrzeit, the 1-year anniversary of her death, at this special vigil. ASL interpretation and live transcription will be available.
Thank you, Andy. That was well done there. I am seeing all these slides, and maybe what's coming up, I'll just speak to, there may be one more slide, but just to say that I noticed, right, we have a whole month focused on relationships. And something we've seen at Reimagine, through starting with COVID and through hosting these spaces, we started out creating a space just for death loss. But we've seen how all these types of losses, it's hard to isolate them, that we're not just going through one thing at one time. It's a whole collection of things in our life that happen, whether it's COVID, whether there's also a relationship loss, whether it's financial challenges, whether there's dealing with the grief in the world and all the world events. It's kind of like piles up on us. And so at Reimagine, we're trying to hold space for all of that together and talk about loss more broadly and think about how it permeates into all the corners of our life, but also how do we move through and channel that pain in really healthy ways that actually, as Rick was talking about, reimagines the world for good. And so our question through all that is, how might we both heal ourselves and the world? And that's a question I ask to you as well, is how can we do that together? And so I think we're taking that step this evening. So that is really that concludes the formal program. I do want to let everyone know that these events at Reimagine are, as this one is, they're, as I mentioned, free. And we believe that everyone should have access to an experience like tonight. And being able to offer these sessions that you can join without leaving your home, that people can join in any situation. And so if you're willing to help make this sustainable and help support this effort, because really there's folks who don't have the means to be able to attend or join something like this, and that's why we make it free. If you'd be willing to make a contribution to Reimagine on our website, that would be really powerful at letsreimagine.org/support. That's what keeps this all sustainable. And we can't wait to share with you some things that are coming up, some really exciting things that we're going to be offering. We're actually building an entirely new social media platform that really reimagines social media from the ground up, because we know how poisonous and toxic it is and how unauthentic it is, and how, though we are more and more connected, we're actually more and more alone. And so we are trying to reinvent that from the ground up, and we're going to invite all of you to participate as first adopters, hopefully, in helping us learn how to do that in a smart way, where we can all channel our pain and our experiences of life in healthy directions through our own narratives and our own stories. Because everyone here, the one thing I know is everyone, each of you who put something in the chat, you all have your own story, and your stories are such gifts. Your authentic stories can be such a gift to everybody else, because there's a lid on this culture on talking about these hard things. And you who showed up here are really leaders in showing up for yourself and for others. To see your face here gives hope to everybody else who's here. To see over 100 people join this at the beginning, that means that something good is happening. And if we can keep sharing those stories, maybe the rest of the world can see that too, and join us in holding space for what's hard, and know that we can actually grow together. No matter how old we are, we can all live our life more fully all the way through the end. So if you're interested in that, in being a part of a kind of an early tester of what we're doing and getting involved, if you want to just put your name in the chat, we can, or your email in the chat rather, we'll just email the folks that sign up more information about this platform we're building, and you can be one of the early folks. So we welcome your just email addresses, and we'll just write out to you if you want to share those in the chat. Now we do have 10 minutes before we're supposed to go here. And with that in mind, there's 63 people here. And I see, thank you so much for those of you who are volunteering emails, and we'll reach out to you with some opportunities we have coming up for the platform. I want to take this opportunity to maybe just hear from a couple people. Why not? We have, we have this sacred time that we've carved out, and there's always something unique that ends up percolating out for those of you that are here. Does anyone amongst us, with no pressure whatsoever to say anything profound, want to just share a reflection on the experience tonight of what you're taking away from Rick, what you're taking away from Patty, and what you're taking away from having the opportunity in community to participate in some kind of collective mourning ritual? Does anyone want to share anything? It's an intimate space, and we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Brad. You unmuted me, so I assume that gave me permission.
Oh, well, permission granted.
Thank you. I am so sorry I missed so much of Rick's. I lost track of time, which none of us here ever do, I know. But I've joined this community recently because I realized that as I seek to reach out to those who can't move in their grief, I try to help those who are stuck and can't do what these wonderful people are doing to do something about their grief. I just want to thank you for being here in a way that allows everyone to suddenly realize that grief is an honorable situation. It is a loving process. You cannot grieve if you have not loved. And my mantra is, my URL is findjoyingrief.com. And I do that because I truly believe that if you have loved and lost, you have the secret and the key to the kind of joy that those who don't cannot understand. Thank you very again for being here for us.
Thank you, Helen. Anyone else have a reflection on tonight you'd like to share? Let's see if I can scour these names and see if I can view everyone here. I think I see everyone who, oh, I see Mary C., who I've seen making some really incredible contributions in the chat. Mary, thank you so much. Just for, I see you commenting, and that really helps people feel connected. So thank you in advance. Oh, I'll unmute you.
I can say something if that's okay.
Sorry, was that Mary or was that Suzanne?
That's Suzanne.
Oh, sorry. Can we hear from Mary? Suzanne, thank you so
sure.
much. We'll go to Mary first, and then we'll
Sure.
go to you.
Oh, thank you, Brad. I guess what I wanted to say, I work with children who are grieving, and children who are friends of children who are grieving. And I think that one of the most important takeaways from tonight, in addition to my own personal appreciation, is that unless we normalize grief and do the hard conversation around grief as grown-ups, how can we role model this for kids? And, you know, it's one of so many things kids can learn through watching us grown-ups, but sometimes they can't because we don't know what to do with our grief and loss. We don't role model this very well because it's awkward and uncomfortable and difficult, and it's just hard. And, you know, I think it's, in addition to learning about grief and loss and how to navigate that journey for ourselves, I feel we owe it to the kids in our lives to become better role models so that they can learn that at a young age, and it'll stand to them in terms of helping their friends and, you know, in terms of dealing with their own loss when that time comes.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that share. And I think it's so true. It's so funny how in our educational system we have, we learn arithmetic and we learn writing, and yet we all know, even just at a party, how many different cultures have different goodbyes. You know, no one knows how to leave. No one knows how to deal with endings, and yet they're happening every moment. No one teaches us some of these emotionally based skills, and maybe because it's just they are individual, but also but there are things we can learn, and there's ways that we can be and show up for one another. And I think that's what we're hoping. That what are those threads? And at the very least, accept that people deal with these things differently, and be able to understand that. So with that, I want to turn to Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne, for where are you
Thank you.
calling in from?
I'm in San Diego at the moment. And but I just wanted to say it's my first time here. I only found out about this get together this morning, and I dealt with a lot of loss from now it's interesting. I lost my daughter, but she's still here. She had a very severe illness, and one day our lives were fine, and the next day it was completely gone. It's been almost 10 years, and she's actually doing fairly well now. And I had a lot of trauma from childhood as well, but dealing with a loss is a loss. And I decided I had to quit work, and I lost a lot of my life and her at the same time. And I fought so hard to get her back. And then I decided while she was hopefully near the end of her treatment, so she had autoimmune encephalitis, that I decided to go back to school and study psychology because I learned so much about how the brain works and how it is so severely impacted when you're suffering from some illness. And my goal is to give back and to share through what I lost and go into education. I've always been some sort of educator my whole life, and to teach psychology and teach about how we can be together. And I'm learning along the way, and I'm so glad. Was it Nancy who went before me? Nancy, was that her name?
Mary.
Mary, sorry, Mary. Sorry, Mary. That I'm glad she went before me because I was not a very good role model for my daughter. There was a lot of stress for everybody in the family. You know, I did my best to be a mother, a doctor, a nurse, a psychologist, everything for her. And now I want to be a good role model for her and show her that her fight wasn't in vain, and that I'm going to fight alongside her and help her finish recovering, and also teach other people that you can move on and you can do more things. And I'm so appreciative. I found out about your program actually from one of my psychology classes. I was just perusing what we had to do for this week, and there was a write-up and there was a link for your group. And I was like, okay, what's this group? So I clicked it, and this thing was for tonight. And I was like, well, you know, it sounds like something that I should do and I should look into, because I had to do a write-up about coping with grief and coping with death. And I was like, maybe I can learn something about myself as well, because I've dealt with grief. I mean, obviously I've had losses of grandparents, but I'm so grateful that I did this tonight, and thankful that you're there, and hopefully I can help more. And I put my email in the chat and help you move forward, because I find this really interesting, and like just happy I was here. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Honestly, that share meant so much, and it's really the kind of the perfect share to almost end on tonight, because it just shows. Oh, I see.
Well,
Oh,
we can end
I just
if
want
need
to
be.
let's see. I don't want to leave Carol out in the cold here, but Suzanne, I just want to say that just shows the power of community, and if each of us could bring somebody each month to this vigil and invite somebody new in, because there's always something we're losing along the way. It's not just a human loss. There's something in the world to mourn and to hold space for and to process that. And that's what we want to build, a container where we can all come together and sit with that, practice that muscle, and then to also move forward with more love in our hearts. And so I just invite all of us to join us and or organize your own event with us. But we have so many ways to get involved, and just so grateful you're here. I don't want to, Carol, 30 seconds.
Oh, just wanted to say, Suzanne, thank you. I almost died from C. diff, a horrible infectious disease. And I have spent the last 10 years of my life doing advocacy work to support you in the fact that you are an advocate now. Just wanted to share that with you.
Well, hopefully you can share a little message in the chat, so you can find each other. That if you know, no pressure to, but there's a way to connect individually, just because that's such a beautiful resource and connection that just happened here. Now we're at time, but one thing I'm excited by. First, I just want to thank my colleagues, Zubin Desai. Thank you so much, Zubin, and Dara Cosberg, if you're still here, and then Andy Engel. These three incredible colleagues that made this possible. Everyone just wave a great goodness to those three. Thank you. And then the other thing I want to just say, which is special for me, is my parents. I see both of my parents here tonight. This isn't, it's kind of a strange, unique, but not totally uncommon occurrence per se. My dad, Jim, who actually has COVID himself and is a physician, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and my mom, Karen, who's at my parents' house. They've been married. It was just their anniversary 2 days ago. And how long have you been married, Dad?
47.
Actually, Mom?
47.
47 years. Hi, Mom. Oh, I can't hear you. Why is that?
I'm unmuted.
Oh yeah, perfect. Everyone, I just want to introduce you to my parents because this is kind of a little community, and they're a big part of my life. And the intergenerational element of, we lose people above us and below us. We just lost my dad's side of the family, my great aunt, who was the last. You don't have to highlight us, Zubin. I'd rather just go back to gallery mode, so I can see everyone. Thank you. But my great aunt was the last surviving member of three sisters who just died or who were all in the Holocaust, and she was the last member of my grandparents' generation. On my dad's side, and my mom's mom, she just broke her femur at 101 and had surgery, and now is back home living life at 101. Thanks and so much to my mom's care. And so, Dad and Mom, just is there any last word in like one sentence each, just like what you're taking away from tonight? Start with Dad, because Mom always gets the last word.
I don't know about one word, but I just say that Rick said something tonight that I think is important. I spend my life trying to tell patients, try to ease their anxiety and remove it and remove their depression. And what I got out of tonight is there's another side to the coin, which is it's okay to live with it and to nurture it, because it cannot necessarily be an emotion that has to take away from how the quality of our life. Yeah.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, this is I really enjoyed tonight. Thank you for
thanks for being here and staying so late at work. Or maybe you're just quarantining from Mom, because my dad's recovering, as I mentioned, from COVID.
No, today's my first day back. I'm good.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. That's so great. And Mom, anything you want to say? No pressure.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. One is that one of the things I took away from today is just the concept of slowing down and letting things sink in, come to you, and to deal with them in whatever way you can in the moment. And what that relates to some degree is that I had a conversation with my cousin this afternoon, and he just lost his wife. He's in his 90s, so they've been together a very long time. And he said to me, he said, I feel kind of badly, he said, because I feel like maybe I'm not grieving in the right way, because I don't have these terrible feelings of emotion and sorrow. And I said, Mike, your love was there, and everybody grieves in their own way. And it just hit him right. And it hit me also. I look at all the faces here, and so many tonight. There were over 100 people. And I see how different, everybody's different. Everybody has their own ways of experiencing life and of grief. And I think it's really good to remember.
Kenny.
Say that again?
Oh, no, keep going, Mom.
It's just really important, I think, to remember in all these experiences that we all have emotions around certain things, and maybe those things are similar, but the way we relate to them is different. And I think appreciating that in everybody can go a long way to having people come together in the world.
Thanks, Mom. So you can see where, I come from such thoughtful parental figures, and I'm just so grateful. And honestly, this community is such a huge part of certainly my life, and I think all of our lives, insofar as this is the culmination of all of our lives tonight, right now. Everything's led to this moment. It's all somehow led us to the random internet corners where we're showing up for one another in such a kind of a random but such beautiful way. And so with that, just to close tonight, why don't we just unmute ourselves, everybody, and we'll just all say the word love at the top of our collective lungs, and it'll sound delightful, and we can all just depart. So on the count of three, let's see a little love in the world. Shout it out to one another, and thank you again for making tonight so special. 3, 2, 1.
Love.
Love.